Hi, today we're looking at 5 gold rings. See you in a minute. Well, this was another slightly difficult build because I couldn't get a handle on anything. The obvious thing to go for is making some rings, turning them in wood perhaps, so bracelet type things, or even a small wooden hand ring, finger ring. But at that stage I hadn't got any great knowledge of wood turning. It was only mid-November that I went on my wood turning course that I felt comfortable in and around a lathe and with sharp pointy tools, so that was probably a non-starter. I then found that amongst all the searches there was a book called The 5 Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, which is it's a martial arts thing from 1645, but it comprises of 5 books, the whole thing, and the sections of fire, water, wind, earth and void. So that sort of took me down a route of perhaps going for some sort of pottery item, because you've got earth, you've got the clay, fire, you've got to actually fire the thing into making a pot, wind, well, you've usually got some sort of bellows or something to get the fire going, you've got water in the clay, and you've got void if you're making some sort of vessel. So that was something that sort of touched as a possible, and I think had I had more time and thought about it a bit more, perhaps I could have gone and done a quick day pottery course or something, or had a little play at doing that, but that wasn't the way it was going to be. In the end, it was much more basic and primeval than that. I looked further into the searches that I did, and I found several companies that were making beers called 5 Rings, and that was far more attractive as an option. So I thought I would make myself something to carry beer in anyway. So this week's build is a beer carrier. It's fairly simple, so I'll just let you watch that, and we'll see how we get on. Now today's build is going to mark a complete different approach from me. This is something I don't normally do, but it's something I suppose I should be doing a lot more. Whenever I normally get a project, I'll sort out the materials I need and then toddle off to the sawmill or B&Q or wherever, buy the material, come back, cut it up, make it. In this instance I've determined to do the whole thing from basically stuff I've got out of skips or lying around in the garage, total scrap. I'm not spending any money on anything for it, just to see what turns out. I've got a couple of lengths of skirting board, that just want sanding down, but they've got some nice pattern to them. Some sort of pine, I expect. Got a couple of old bed slats. I've got a piece of pallet wood that I've basically run through the planer at Menin Sheds and cut a really rough end off. And I've got a couple of lengths of old broom handles. And essentially that's really all I think I need. I probably need a bit of ply. I've got some ply up in the roof that's come out of old work carts as a base. But all I need to do really is establish, I've got a couple of bottles of beer here, just to establish the sort of size I need. The intention is to make the dividers out of the bed slats because they're nicely rounded. Do some halved joints on those to divide it into 6 compartments. I'll run the sides out of the skirting board material, and then I'll make a couple of ends up out of this pallet wood. So that's my footprint. The inside size is going to be about 175 by 270. I'm going to make the middle dividers lift out purely and simply because although it's interesting to build a beer caddy and it's interesting to do it out of reclaimed materials, ultimately I'm not sure I particularly need one. But what I do need is something to put all my drills and drivers in when I go out anywhere.
Because of the fact that Boris Johnson has a clear mandate to deliver Brexit as soon as possible.
How are you feeling today? I think we spoke earlier in the week, we were talking about Trade 22. But I was shocked at hearing it was like the third, the biggest loss since yet. And I'm always shocked to hear that, especially after the confusion there's been parties and
I may have mentioned before how jammy I can be sometimes. I needed a base piece of something to go in this. The only thing I hadn't sourced was a base for the and I measured it out and got a width on it, and then I glued up those 2 pieces of pallet wood, but in fact they are probably about 1/4 of an inch wider than that. And I went up in the space over in the roof there to get some timber, and I've got some plywood there which is from one of the carts that I built earlier on that I ripped down. That is absolutely spot on, exactly the same width as those timbers that I just ripped down on the and thickness down on the machine at Menin Sheds to the millimetre. so that's got all the component parts done. Nothing screwed or glued together yet, but I've got the handle housed in halfway into the top so that it's clear on the outside. I'll probably just put a screw through just to hold that in place after it's glued. The only thing I'm not really happy with at the moment is the finish on it though, because there are too many different sorts of thing going on here, and I needed to find something to tie it together somehow. The end is far too pale compared to the sides. The centre part is completely different wood again. The handle's different again, and I've got the plywood on the base. So what I'm going to do is glue it up like this, and then I think I'm going to leave the slatted piece natural wood. Probably the handle, I'm not sure yet, but the rest of it, to pull it all together, I think I'm going to use the black wood stain that I was using earlier on the candles in our living room, the candelabra that I did in the second video of this series. Right, that's the first coat on. It's raised the grain a bit, you can feel it dragging on the brush already. I'll let that dry out now, give it a light sand, and then probably pop another coat on. So that's the beer tote finished. It's multi-purpose. I can take the beers out, take the centre divider out, and then use it as a tote for the drills, and the Ryobi driver, and the random orbital sander, and the drill. Well, the learning from that one has been not particularly huge, but again, totally different culture, all about learning and Japanese martial arts, finding the distance back that this sort of thing goes into the mid-1600s, and again, taking a nice leisurely meander around all the various breweries that produce beers, craft beers in this country. And it's something that, again, it will be of use, and it will be something that I'll be able to enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and we'll be on to 6 geese laying. See you then. Bye.